Kia whakapaingia te pokapū me te whare, te wāhi, te taone nui, te ngākau, te maunga, te piringa, te ana, te awa, te whenua, te moana, te mautere, te raurau me ngā wāhi katoa, e kōrirotia ai te atua, e whakakororia tia ai tōna nui. Blessed is the spot, and the house, and the place, and the city, and the heart, and the mountain, and the refuge, and the cave, and the valley, and the land, and the sea, and the island, and the meadow, where mention of God hath been made, and his praise glorified. Pahaula. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā maunga whakahi, e ngā awa, e ngā pātaka o ngā taonga tuku iho, nei rā te mihi kia koutou katoa. Nei rā te reo rāhiri, e karanga ana kia koutou katoa kua tai mai i tēnei rangi whakamaumahara o ngā wahine toa. Kia koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai, tauti mai. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, huri noa tēnā tātou katoa.
قفصمون توی Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome. Dorud bai shoma. My name is Shiva Kolodna, and along with Sama Hall, it is our honor to welcome you on behalf of the New Zealand Baha'i community. We have a number of dignitaries in the audience, including the Honourable Dr. Duncan Webb, Minister of Commerce and Consumer Affairs and an MP for Christchurch Central, Dr. Surinder Tandon Farah Khosravi and Hero Modaras from the Christchurch Multicultural Council, Jan Bousted, District Governor of Rotary, Carolyn Boswell from Waimakariri District Council, members of the UC Equity Reference Group, UC Diversity Champions, academic and general staff, and the University Chaplain, as well as representatives from the New Zealand Police and other community organisations. Welcome to you all. This June marks 40 years since the execution of 10 Baha'i women in Shiraz. All were executed on one night for their beliefs. One was 17, most were in their 20s. They were hanged one by one, each forced to watch the other woman's death in an attempt to coerce them to renounce their faith. None did. Unyieldingly, they stood firm in their freedom of thought and belief for justice and equality.
Their tragic story, however, is not over. The story continues to unfold today as women in Iran follow the same path and make the same choice: to champion the principles of justice and equality at any cost, even their lives. To honour the executed women and the long struggle for equality lived by women of all faiths in Iran, the Baha'i international community has now launched a global year-long campaign called Our Story is One. The campaign aims to demonstrate that despite the Iranian government's efforts to sow discord and hate between groups, our story is a shared one. The women of Iran have become unified in their suffering and resilience, in their persecution and unwavering strength to combat oppression and, above all else, to rebuild Iran, whatever sacrifices it takes.
Today's program is designed to allow us to reflect on the poignant moments in history where the struggle for gender equality in Iran was center stage. The program weaves between artistic expression, music, and historical accounts. The following song, whilst focusing on 17-year-old Mona, the youngest of the 10 women to be executed, is dedicated to the collective memory of all 10 women who, in the face of hatred, responded with boundless love. Amidst adversity, demonstrated unwavering perseverance, and in the embrace of death, exhibited remarkable courage.
A raindrop holds the key to life, unlocking with its grace the forces that lay hidden, that feel its kind embrace. Humble though it may appear, its strength and power unheeded, yet none resists this heaven's gift. It quickens unimpeded. A teardrop holds the key to sight. Behold, it blesses much. With greater understanding, the eye that it does touch. Plaintive though it may appear,
The repression of women in Iran has a shamefully long history. In the 19th century, it was the custom for women never to be seen by others beyond their own families. In social settings, even in their own homes, they sat behind a curtain if males were present. Women were not educated, and they were unable to participate in public life in any way. These extreme social constraints were profoundly challenged with the coming of the Baha'i Faith in the mid-19th century. Maybe the first of many courageous women to challenge the lowly status of women was Tahirih, an extraordinarily gifted poet whose works are still celebrated in Iran today. She fearlessly embraced this new cause and at once decried the lamentable traditions of the society into which she had been born.
Of Tahirih, the French historian Nicolas stated that she had an ardent temperament, a just, clear intelligence, remarkable poise, and an untamable courage. The chief characteristic of her speech was an almost shocking plainness, and yet when she spoke, you were stirred to the bottom of your soul and filled with admiration. Tears came from your eyes. None could resist her charm. All testified to the extraordinary traits of her character, marveled at her amazing personality, and were convinced of the sincerity of her conviction.
In 1848, Tahirih took the unprecedented step of attending an all-male conference. During this conference, she appeared in person before the male participants, which was shocking enough. And then, in an action which resulted in complete chaos, she removed her veil and proclaimed,
This day is the day on which the fetters of the past are burst asunder. I am the word which shall put to flight the chiefs and nobles of the earth.
Tahirih was placed under house arrest in the home of the mayor of Tehran, while the authorities arranged to silence her permanently. Ensuring her imminent demise, Tahirih dressed like a bride and waited, veiled and ready, for the soldiers who came to take her away. She said to the wife of the mayor,
Remember me, and rejoice in my gladness.
When the order was given to strangle her with her own silken scarf, she turned to the soldiers and declared,
"You may kill me as soon as you like, but you will not stop the emancipation of women."
It was August 1852. She was 36 years old.
Within 2 months, as if an echo, Elizabeth Cody Stanton in the state of New York held the first convention called for the sole purpose of discussing women's rights. Her demand for women's rights to vote quickly became a central tenet of the women's movement. And you will all know that in 1893, New Zealand was the first country in the world to grant women the right to vote.
The Baha'i Faith spread quickly in Iran, promulgating the principles of gender equality and social justice for all. By the turn of the century, active steps were being taken to improve the lot of Iranian women. One significant figure to pioneer women's health and education in Iran was an American Baha'i named Dr. Susan Moody. Born in 1851, Susan Moody studied music, art, and finally medicine. In her late 50s, she heard the call for a woman doctor to travel to Iran because women were so deprived of medical care. Iranian women couldn't unveil themselves before male doctors, and since there were no women doctors, they were in desperate need of appropriate medical care.
I knew then why I felt the urge so strongly to study medicine. I was obliged to study medicine in order to come to Iran.
She arrived in Tehran at the end of 1909 at almost 60 years of age and opened a clinic for women and girls. She worked from morning till evening, 7 days a week. There were always long lines waiting to see her. With more work than Susan could do alone, she tried to train Iranian women, but their lack of a basic education at that time made this difficult. So what did she do? She opened the Tarbiyat School for Girls in 1910, a formal institution administered by the Tehran Baha'i community, which enrolled female students from all religions. Susan became fluent in Farsi and grew to love the people of Iran, working tirelessly into her late 70s.
I found the custom of sitting on the floor to eat easy to do, but I have to say getting up was much harder.
In 1934, Dr. Susan Moody passed away. She was 82 years old. Shortly before her death, when one of her many visitors asked her to say something about her life that could be preserved for posterity, all she said was,
"Let her go. Let her pass into the infinite."
The Tarbiyat School, the first and most successful of its kind, was closed by government decree in 1934 in a wave of renewed persecutions against the Baha'i community. All 19 Baha'i schools, among the most advanced in the country, were closed down on the same day by order of the Minister of Education.
In the 1920s, women's rights in Iran began to make significant progress towards gender equality. Education was more accessible to girls when it became free for both boys and girls to attend, and Iran's first university allowed the enrollment of women. By the mid-1900s, the suffrage movement made significant headway, and women were eventually granted the right to vote in 1963. Despite many obstacles, women's organizations lobbied for improvements in women's rights. By the late 1970s, several women served in Iran's parliament, and hundreds took up positions in local councils. Iranian women were now also a considerable part of the workforce, taking their rightful place in all fields of human endeavor. However, in 1979, Iran's revolution led to a regression in women's rights that is present to this day. The most obvious of these was the passing of the mandatory dress code, along with the establishment of the morality police. It was during this time also that the persecution against the Baha'i community intensified. In 1982, the community experienced a torrent of raids, arrests, and deprivation of basic human rights, which continue to this day. Their stories are many and include the arrest, imprisonment, and execution of many Baha'is.
Our next performance draws on the words from a poem written in prison by Mahvash Sabet. Mahvash, a school principal, was recently resentenced to another 10 years in prison, bringing her total sentence to 20 years simply because she is a Baha'i. In her poem, she talks of the anguish of imprisonment. She writes, "A day when drowning in thoughts of you, I whisper my songs to the dawn. I hold the soft strands of rain, my warm tears, and weave a string of pearls. One day, one day, one day. A day when all hopes of freedom vanish like a reflection on the water. It is mystery, the work of destiny. My longing for you is the test and the torture. One day, one day, one day." The song Yek Ruz, or One Day, will be performed by Sombol Taifi, a singer of international acclaim, based in Auckland. She is accompanied by gifted pianist and arranger Stephen Small. Please join us in welcoming them back to the stage.
یک روز تو را دوباره میبینم، یک روز تو را دوباره مییابم، شب تا به سحر چو کودکی آرام بر سینه تو دوباره میخوابم. یک روز که دل گرفته میگریم در گوشه خلوتی به یاد تو، یک روز که عکس مهربانت را در غربت یک کتاب میبینم. یک روز، یک روز، یک روز. یک روز که ناامید و دلتنگم، آزرده دل و شکسته از دوری، بی خوابم و بی تحمل و تنها، از قفل و قفس نشان نمیماند می آیم و در پناه آغوشت چون تشنه کنار چشمه آبم آن روز تو را دوباره میبینم آن روز تو را دوباره مییابم شب تا به سحر چو کودکی آرام بر سینه تو دوباره میخوابم بر سینه تو دوباره میخوابم
Today is the 40th anniversary of the day on which the 10 women who we are commemorating were executed. We would now like to share with you the stories of 3 of these young women. Roya Eshraghi was a lively, affectionate young woman who loved animals. She was in her 3rd year of studying veterinary medicine when Baha'i students were expelled from Pahlavi University in Shiraz. On November 29th, when she was at home with her father and mother Ezzat, revolutionary guards raided their home and arrested all 3. They subjected the family to insults and abuse, torture and torment. Roya was 22 when she was arrested, and she had her final birthday in prison. She was kind to all her fellow inmates, regardless of their beliefs or alleged crimes. One was a sickly old woman nicknamed Mama Maryam, who had been charged with murder. Nobody visited her, so Roya went to her cell and took care of her. She fed her and even managed to get her medication. Mama Maryam later recovered and was released after being found innocent of her crimes. After 8 months in prison, Roya's father was hanged on June 16th. 2 days later, Roya and her mother were also hanged, along with the other 8 women we are commemorating on 18th June 1983.
Tahira Siavashi was my grandmother's cousin. She studied nursing at the University of Tehran before working at Yasuj Hospital, where she was selected as Model Nurse of the Year. She moved to Shiraz and worked at Fatinajad Hospital before she was fired because she was a Baha'i. She found work at another hospital and continually rejected her brother's invitation to move to America and live her life there. She would tell him, "I want to serve my countrymen." Whilst in prison, Tahira would wash the other prisoners' clothes and lend them clothes while theirs was drying. Her husband, Jamshid, had also been detained in solitary confinement and was brutally tortured. Tahira was forced to watch him being tortured in an attempt to coerce her into recanting her faith. Jamshid was executed by hanging on 16th June 1983, 2 days before Tahira's execution. Mona had a beautiful singing voice and a genuine love for those around her, especially younger children who would often flock to her when she arrived at school. By the time Mona became a teenager, she was well known in Shiraz, both inside and outside the Baha'i community. She was noted for academic excellence. When she turned 15, Mona began teaching Baha'i children's classes, which include the study of the great religions, developing spiritual qualities, encouraging the children to put their talents and education to the service of their fellow man, and especially learning to appreciate the oneness and diversity of the human family. It was a Saturday night and Mona was at home with her parents. She had an English test coming up and was studying when there was a knock at the front door and 4 armed officers greeted her father. After ransacking their home, Mona and her father were taken away. Mona's mother was kept from visiting her daughter for 1 month. During this time, Mona was beaten and tortured, lashed on the soles of her feet with a cable, and then forced to walk on them. On the night of the 10 women's executions, Mona chose to be the last. She kissed the hands of her executioner and put the noose around her own neck. She was 17 years old.
In honor of the ultimate sacrifice made by the 10 women in Shiraz on that fateful night 40 years ago, we would like to name each one.
Mona Mahmoudnejad, 17 years old.
Roya Eshraghi, 23 years old, and her mother Izzat Janami Eshraghi, 57 years old.
Simin Saberi, 24 years old.
Shaheen Dalvand, 25 years old.
Akhtar Sabet, 25 years old.
Mahshid Nirumand, 28 years old.
Zareen Mourimi Abiane, 29 years old.
Tahir Arjamandi Siavashi, 30 years old.
Nosrat Ghofrani Yaldai, 46 years old.
Whilst traveling on the bus to their place of execution, the women showed heroism. They sang and chanted as though they were enjoying a pleasant outing. One of the prayers they chanted was the following.
Allahumma ya Sabu, ya Qudus, ya Rahman, ya Mannan, farij lana bil fazl wal ihsan, innaka Rahman Mannan. Allahumma ya Sabur, ya Qudus, ya Hanan, ya Mannan. Allahumma ya Sabur, ya Qudus, ya Hanan, ya Mannan. Farij lana bil fazl wal ihsan, innaka Rahmanu Mannan, innaka Rahmanu Mannan. Allahumma ya Sabur, ya Qudus, ya Hanan, ya Mannan. Allahumma ya Sabur, ya Qudus, ya Hanan, ya Mannan. Farij lana bil fazl wal ihsan, innaka Rahmanu Mannan, innaka Rahmanu Mannan.
Each woman was hung one by one, forced to watch the other woman's deaths. Each refused to recant her faith and its affirmation of gender equality and social justice for all.
The youngest, Mona, was the last to be executed.
Ten voices, soft as velvet, sing in the veil of time. 10 verses validating love in sacrificial rhyme. 10 bells in the starry tide, whose song will always chime, whose song will always chime. 10 vanished on a summer's night, like pendants from a cord, the diadem of martyrdom, forever their reward. 10 candles in the starry heights, illuminating all, illuminating all. Lift up your voices and sing out the song of the kingdom spread far and wide, the precepts and counsels of the loving Lord, so that this world will change into another world. Lift up, 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 lift up. 10 virtues and 10 values, 10 victories for all time, 10 valedictories rising like roses on a vine, 10 angels in the starry night, whose light will never shine, whose light will never shine. Lift up your voices and sing out the song of the kingdom spread far and wide, the precepts and counsels of the loving Lord, so that this world will change into another world. Another world. Another world. Another world. Another world. Lift up, lift up. Lift up, lift up. Sing out, sing out. Sing out, sing out. Sing out, sing out.
Last September, a young Kurdish Iranian woman, Mahsa Amini, was arrested by the morality police for purportedly not wearing her hijab correctly. Mahsa subsequently died while in official custody. Her death triggered unprecedented wave of protests which swept Iran, was led by women and young girls, and resulted in the loss of a number of lives, mass arrests, and subsequent secret trials and executions. It also drew the attention of the world to the plight of women in Iran. Their fight for gender equality continues.
As the international governing body of the Baha'i Faith so eloquently wrote to the Iranian community faced with ongoing persecution, with an illumined conscience, with a world-embracing vision, with no partisan political agenda, and with due regard to law and order, strive for the regeneration of your country.
Our Story as One is a global campaign marking the 40th anniversary of the execution of 10 women who were asked to choose between their beliefs and their lives. They chose to stand for gender equality and social justice. Today, we call on officials, civil society organizations, prominent individuals, celebrities, and the public to join our campaign to honor all women in Iran who have contributed to the long struggle for gender equality walked by countless women over the decades. That road has been marked by the sacrifices of those who chose to stand for their principles, even over their lives. Let us walk with them and show that we are inextricably linked, regardless of faith and background, and that we will make our voices heard until our shared ideals are recognized.
To end, we would like to share with you a final affirming statement. Nothing can prevail against an idea whose time has come. The time has arrived for freedom of belief, for harmony between religion and science, faith and reason, for the advancement of women, for freedom from prejudice of every kind, for mutual respect between diverse peoples and nations. Indeed, for the unity of the entire human race.
Please welcome Amelia Samandari, the president of the Soul Food UC Club, to end today's formalities.
Thank you all for attending today. Soul Food UC would like to acknowledge everyone who made this program possible by generously volunteering their time and their talents. Particular thanks go to Grant and Jenny Hinden-Miller for the program content, and to Sombol Taifi and pianist Stephen Small for traveling from Auckland to join us for this special commemoration. We warmly invite you to join us now for an afternoon tea in Bentley's and to view the exhibition by Azim Tashakor in the adjoining room. Our ushers will direct you up those stairs. As you exit the theater, please take a copy of the card containing the text of the final quotation.